Well, at first I gotta say, thank you, Angus, for making us happy, for making our readers happy, because
Yes.
your music, this is our 25th anniversary guitar edition. And for
Ah, yes,
25 years, you've been in
yes.
this magazine and you've been a main part, your music has been a main part for our readers to play guitar.
Ah, oh, well, I hope they're learning good habits, you know.
They do actually. So
Yeah.
this makes this all about sound, influences, guitars, amps, because that's what our readers are really interested in. And
Okay.
I gotta say, since you've been such a tremendous influence for our readers and for me for the past,
Yes.
let's say, 5 decades,
Yes.
um, it's interesting because it's rather rare that you've been asked about your influences. So what thrilled you when you started playing guitar?
Um, I think, ooh, a lot of influences. It was probably around the. Yeah, I mean, I could play guitar a little bit, but I really got focused on it when I was in my around the years, when I was about 12 into my teenage years. I started to focus more on it, and around when I was about 13, 14, I first, that's when I think Jimi Hendrix appeared on the
Hmm.
horizon. He started it. And I was when I first heard, the, the song "Purple Haze," I was totally enthralled. How's he doing that? I was just so impressed with it, and plus Malcolm, my brother, there was a few shows we had also seen. We had gone the two of us together, and we'd seen people like. It was the band the Yardbirds who they'd come
Okay.
to Australia, and at the time it was the lineup had just changed. I think they originally used to have I think it was Jeff Beck and
Right.
some someone yeah, Jeff Beck but then later on when we saw them they didn't have Jeff Beck there, they had Jimmy Page on
Jimmy Page. I was
guitar.
just gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, so that was good because at that time, that kind of sound especially for guitar, it jumped out at you, the sound of it, and so that was really good. But then when along came Hendrix, you kind of went, wow, this is another level, on guitar. So I was very much a fan of that. So. And I mean, I really couldn't. I was not really a good note picker, like people could practice, like they could hear a song and just, pick up the notes. I used to say to Malcolm, "Here, you pick up the notes and then show me." So he would do that. He'd pick out all the notes of anything I wanted to know. Yeah, and then he would just show me, and then I would play it like he showed me.
That's super interesting.
Yes. So, but I had a host of styles. I had from other members, family members who played. You pick up a bit of Chuck Berry, you pick up a bit of
Hmm.
blues. Um, so from and some folk tunes. So it had a bit of a variety of different stuff. Even some early old traditional jazz stuff. That my sister she was always getting me different records and stuff because she knew we were interested in doing stuff. So and I'd even it wasn't so much guitar. I might just pick up. I heard like a Louis Armstrong play on the trumpet, do a solo, and I go, oh, I like the notes, and I would learn the notes. So
That's
that was
interesting.
always fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had quite a bit of variety, and I mean, there's a lot. But I mean, when I look at all the players who I admire, there's a lot of players. You can go from A to Z. There's a lot of players.
Okay. Okay. Um, let's talk about something that is very super important, and that's your amplifier sound. It's obvious that you are a British amplifier fan of
Yes,
British Marshalls,
yes.
and I was curious, and our readers would be very curious. When did you ever hear the first Marshall? When you got impressed with the sound of the British amplifiers the first time?
Um, I think it was mainly Malcolm. Malcolm, he was impressed with the Marshall amps, and when he got his first job, and he was paid job, he saved his money and he got a Marshall amp, and and he loved it. He loved the sound. He got a great sound out of it, and. But like for me, and it was also Malcolm who bought me. He found a guy. There was a guy who had a little amp somewhere, and it was about 60 watts, and the guy was selling it very cheap, and it was brand new. The guy had never used it, and he had it for a lot of years, and it was an amp that I think was originally made in New Zealand of all places, and Malcolm got me that, and I was really in love with that amp because it was a unique kind of it had a unique kind of sound to it, and I didn't need to use any pedals or fuzz
Yeah,
tones or anything like this, and it just had a little booster that you would pull out. You pull out, but it was very natural, and then you would turn it, and you'd get this very nice, sweet, natural
So
distortion.
was
And
it a Marshall? Can you
it
recall the
wasn't a
particular
Marshall,
model?
no. It wasn't a Marshall. It was just like a local brand, and so I was very much, I played that for years, and it was really when Malcolm got me, and said, you want to play together in the band with him, which become AC/DC. That's really when I said, well, I better get a bigger amp, get Marshall. Yeah. So
Okay,
that's
was
when
it?
and Malcolm again found me a cheap, he found one. It was like a guy had secondhand, but it was in good condition. So it was like a 100 watts, the super lead amp. So, and then I just got so used to playing them, the two of us together. And Malcolm always knew how to get the best sounds out of them. Yeah. He knew you could line up a whole heap of Marshalls, but Malcolm could go through them and he'd find the hot ones. He'd go, that one, this one. He'd go through them all. And that's what he did also with me. And he would get because sometimes I'd be there. I'll fiddle. I used to just fiddle away with them, and Malcolm and I get frustrated sometimes with it. And Malcolm would just go, "I'll leave it with me," and he would dial it in. And he'd always manage to get me a real good sound out of them.
And the Marshalls, actually the super leads and the super bass, they're still in the touring rig, right? Still up to date.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, there's another interesting thing, and that is the component guitar. It's the SG, always the SG. I mean, it's your signature instrument. There's no doubt about that. When did the SG step into your life? Can you remember that moment?
Really, again, Malcolm, because I had a Hofner guitar at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Malcolm also gave me that because, one of my older brothers, the guy in his band, he had the Gretsch guitar, which was what he gave to Malcolm. And so Malcolm said, you have this is my, the Hofner. and which he had got off my other brother. So it was a case of Malcolm gave me the Hofner, and then I had the Hofner. And then one day Malcolm came in and he said, there's a little shop up here. The guy's got a lot of great guitars. He's got like Les Pauls, he's got Strats, he's got everything in his shop. They're all, and he went through them all and he said, but there's this really, really nice SG guitar. And he said, but go down there. He said, try out the other guitars. He said, but make sure you try out that SG. So I went through and I picked up the SG and I went, wow, because it just felt so good and I could play it so easy. And then I went and tried the other ones again, but I went back to the SG, and I thought, I've got to get this SG. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So
I never heard this particular story. It's super interesting, Angus.
Yes. So I ended up getting that SG, but again through Malcolm finding it and telling me go to this shop and so that was
try it out.
And try it out. So and I was glad I got it. I was over the moon when I got it. Yeah. And it's still that guitar. I play it on all the studio albums. Yeah, that's the guitar. Yeah. Now what I do is I only bring it out for the studio because after a while when I was performing live, it used to get so many bumps and cracks and then I get so nervous about it that I would go, well, because I use it all the time in the studio, and I go, no, I've got to hold on to it. It has its own sting.
I would cherish that guitar as well. I totally understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, because it has its own. I've got lots of other SGs, and there's another SG I've also used in the studio, but again, it's also one that it's roughly close, I think, to the same as mine, maybe a year or maybe even earlier, and but it's also got a good sound about it. So I always kind of stuck to those. Well, there were three of them actually, but so but the main one still is the first guitar. Yeah. It has its own, unique little sound.
Yeah, totally. Let's take one more minute with the sound. We don't have to exaggerate this as much, but it's interesting. You used a special wireless device, yes, which is called Schaeffer-Vega Diversity.
Yes. Yeah.
It's kind of a lot of fuss about this in the guitar scene because there's a pedal as well right now available that's kind of like replicates or it says that it replicates the sound of the wireless device. How important is that particular device for you?
Well, the original ones, the Schaefer, the man who built them, I think it was when we made the album Power Rage, is the very first one. And really it came down to when we were going to do some guitar overdub, some solos and that. And Malcolm had said to my brother George, because they were producing, him and Harry Vanda were producing the album. And they, Malcolm had said, Angus, you get out the Vega system and let them hear, let them hear how it works with with your guitar, And because sometimes what we used to do is go in, I might go in there depending on, you might go into the live room and just play in there with headphones on. But sometimes my brother would say, I'll come in the studio and get a long cable. And then we would go in, but sometimes the cable, with being that long, you're losing some of the power of the signal. So it was Malcolm's suggestion: get your Schaefer Vega in, and we'll dial it in. So that's what happened when I got it out, and because you could boost the signal on it, you could boost it, but really, I would say a lot of that signal, and because I've seen it with other people match up, you can do. It's got a kind of compression about it. So some people dial up, and they get a compression to try and match up. You could match up that sound, and for some reason it has its own kind of compression in it. That's the original ones. And I used to like it for stage. And again, it was Malcolm who even got the system. He even found the guy, Schaefer. He found the guy in New York. And, because a few shows I had got electric shocks. So Malcolm was, he didn't want me getting a bad, shock one night. So he said he'd heard about it from someone. A guy had a new system, because that was the wireless system he'd been out before by various people, but it only worked on like one special system. And the difference between Schaefer was he'd got two signals going, and they called it like dual diversity. So he had perfected that, and that started off the modern range of people starting to make newer transmitters and stuff. So, and he Malcolm said he tried it for me. We were playing in New York in a theater called the Palladium. Malcolm said he took it and he walked around the whole block outside with the guitar. And he said, and you didn't hear the signal drop. He said it was that powerful. Okay. So he says, and I would love it. He said, you're going to love it. He said, because you won't have to crank up, sometimes crank up your amp to boost it a bit. Here we go. It's got a natural, you got this boost signal. You can boost the signal and get a little bit more drive in it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Now, this is my last question, since I just got the signal that we have like about 4 minutes left. Yeah. Let's close this chat that I really enjoyed with the question of influences, because I think there's a particular thing going on with the AC/DC sound. The new album and the past albums, you always added a little bit of more to the AC/DC sound universe, particularly with Power Up, which was my personal highlight in a totally sucking 2020. This really was shining a light on this year. What are you listening right now? What's influencing Angus Young right now when you're writing?
What do you mean? Am I listening to someone else's thing? No, well, I don't do that then. No, what I do is usually when I'm not doing something and I want to listen to something, my preference is this. I go back to when I was 14 and 13, I'll hear a bit of Hendrix, I'll hear a bit of early rock, what I like, some of the songs.
Okay.
And that's what I do. I'm stuck maybe in that era. I like that era of music, So I go back to those times and
so there's no impulse from other band members, for example?
I do.
Musical impulse, musical influence from Stevie or someone else in the band that says, listen to this record too?
What do they like? I think they've got different. Probably, I know Stevie likes a bit of blues music a lot. He plays a lot of songs like that, and I think Brian's got a big variety, everything from blues to early rock and roll, and I think Cliff's probably about the same. There's a lot of territory that we all cover. you know, in various forms, you know, what we like in music. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could talk for hours with you right now, but
Yes.
thank you so much for doing this interview. I'm thrilled. It was super interesting.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Marcel. Well, thank you. Yeah.
So we're gonna celebrate 25 years of Guitar Magazine with you these days.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
yeah, stay healthy,
Well,
stay safe, Angus.
yes. And happy 25th then to all your readers.